Hey everybody, I'm Bryan Grossman, Editor-in-Chief of the Colorado Springs Independent. Welcome to the Indy 15, the weekly show that recaps everything you need to know in the news. Guests in studio today are Greta Anderson, reporter with the Colorado Springs Indy, and Helen Lewis, who is managing editor of the Colorado Springs Indy. Welcome, Greta and Helen.
Thanks, Bryan.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure. We're here to talk to Greta a little bit about a story that appeared, it's been 2 weeks now, I think. Yep. September 14th, it was the All in Their Head story about the fentanyl situation where it appears police officers and maybe other first responders across the country have had interactions with fentanyl that didn't turn out well, but we're learning that it may have been all in their head. Can you go into some detail about that story and how it came about?
Sure. Well, we decided to dig more into this issue after Corey Hutchins, a journalism chair at Colorado College, he posted in his newsletter a little bit about the expert opinion on fentanyl overdoses and this experience of cops, a couple that have gone viral over the past few years, appearing to overdose on fentanyl by simply either being in the presence of the drug during a search or by touching it while searching vehicles and things like that. But we had two examples of that happen around Colorado Springs over the summer. One incident was in Fountain and one was with police in Monument. And so those kind of sparked some discussion in local media about how it's covered in media, how we take these reports from police and don't really investigate them further when they happen. But there is a pretty sound consensus among toxicologists that you cannot overdose by simply touching fentanyl or by being in its presence. And so I brought that to the Monument Department and the Fountain Department to learn more about what happened during those incidents and maybe why they were thinking they were fentanyl overdoses.
And what did we learn from the police?
So it is pretty confusing, and they are reluctant to say and agree with those experts that you cannot overdose because they've seen things that look like overdoses with their own officers. Right. Monument, I believe, has 3 times, but this incident in Fountain was their first. But what they told me, and this was pretty much the case for both departments, is they will do either field tests or tests after the fact of both the substance, anything found on the officer's equipment, clothing, gloves if they were using them, as well as the bodies of the officers when they're transported to a medical facility. And pretty much all of those tests came back with mixed results in their experiences. So there was one example that kind of sticks in my mind from the Monument Department, where an officer encountered like a liquid substance that was suspected to be fentanyl, but later, and she, had the symptoms of overdose, was hospitalized, and later her blood tested positive for an opioid. However, the substance itself tested negative for an opioid. So there's kind of this confusion, and the testing and the data itself, they say, doesn't really support any conclusion in these types of situations. So they're hesitant to say, absolutely an officer cannot overdose on the scene when they're simply touching or in the vicinity of fentanyl because they believe it's happened before. And another point about just kind of an interesting point from the Fountain officer from July who had a suspected overdose is he was told by the emergency room doctor that cared for him that he was not experiencing an overdose, but to this day still believes he was. Yeah. So there's this kind of belief and sense that they have that it can happen, even though there's experts out there that say it can't.
And you talked to Dr. Leon Kelly, El Paso County Coroner. What did Leon tell you?
So Leon pretty much said the same thing as the other toxicology experts out there. The consensus is you cannot overdose from being in the vicinity or just simply touching it. He emphasized that unless, you could inhale it, an overdose, but unless it's a very, very large amount, you can't. In most cases with emergency responders, you're not inhaling a very large amount. It doesn't really stick around in the air. That can be another myth, is that it enters the air. If you open up a Ziploc baggie and there's pressed pills in there, it enters the air and can get on your face. He says, that's not very, very, very likely. Yeah. But he does sympathize with the officers and the departments who want to be as cautious as possible. He gave me some background on why this myth has kind of pervaded for several years, and it's because the potency of fentanyl is so high, and with these illicit pills, you really never know how much fentanyl is in them. So there's this level of anxiety that officers feel, and while a certain level of anxiety, he said, is fine in those types of situations, and you want to always wear the nitrile gloves, which are usually those black, thicker gloves, when you're handling them. But he emphasized that officers and departments should know that it's not possible. It's
not as dangerous as maybe some people think it is.
Yeah, and he acknowledged that there's an overreaction a lot of the time. And it is potentially like a panic reaction or something in the mind of the officers.
It's interesting. And from a journalism standpoint and an editing standpoint, you would think the police would be a valid source of information on this. Yeah. But here's Corey over at Colorado College saying that journalists weren't going far enough to vet what the police were saying. So I think a lot of journalists and even editors would say, well, a police chief or somebody with CSPD or that kind of thing, that's a valid source on a topic like this. But then you hear other people saying, you're...
When it turns out there's so much about this particular thing, and what they're seeing, what they think they're seeing may not be what they're actually seeing, that becomes an issue. Yeah,
and it makes editors' jobs harder because then we have to think, is this really a valid source on this topic, or do we need to go and talk to other people?
Yeah, and I think our immediate reaction when we see that type of release from a police department is like, oh my gosh, there's an officer who's down and being hospitalized for a potential exposure, and we don't want to see that. The community doesn't want to see that, and it's something that I think a lot of journalists would want people to know. But I think just taking one step further and talking to a couple of experts, even just looking online at what the CDC has up for fentanyl and protection for emergency responders, they link to all those studies that say it's highly, highly unlikely for them to overdose. So just going that one extra step in those cases where we get releases like that, I think could be beneficial. And I'm glad Corey brought it up because I think at least our media market is very well aware of that type of thing now. Well,
and I remember seeing one of those YouTube videos, and I think I even shared it after we decided to do this story of a police officer who was who had come in contact with fentanyl and was having health issues, and I even told people after I saw that. And fentanyl was, the drug du jour in the news, and said, "Oh yeah, it's dangerous stuff. If you touch it, this could happen." And so, you got to be careful, right?
Yeah.
You can't believe everything you see.
Yeah.
Well, it was a great story, but we have even more news to talk about because, like I said, that was 2 weeks ago. So we've got the paper that's on newsstands right now. That's our fall arts preview. It's got everything that's going on arts-wise, through the end of the year and even going into next year a bit, I think. But we also have some solid news in here, too. Do you want to talk, Helen, about A Cut Above?
We should say, too, that even though it's 2 weeks ago, Greta's story you can find still online.
You can find it online.
csindy.com.
Yep. Yeah. Along with all our old indie stuff.
Yeah.
So, yep.
This story is a great story out of Community Works. It was done by Anna, who can't be here because she's our correspondent on the other side of the country.
Right.
So Anna Fiorino wrote this. So Community Works works to help people with barriers to employment, particularly justice-involved, formerly incarcerated people, to get training, all kinds of skills, wardrobe, soft skills, and to get job placements and jobs. So one of the things that they have in their centre is a barber shop. It's basically the Joaquin Mobley, who you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see Joaquin here. He describes it as the gateway into community work. So the barber shop is really an essential part of community works. And what they're doing is taking this awareness that a barber shop is a place where people tend to open up and confide in their barbers and speak freely. They're taking that a step further and getting mental health support training for their barbers so that it goes beyond. It's still very much like the conversation you would have, but the barber is trained to help you make progress, trained to respond in helpful ways in terms of mental health and in terms of what kind of resources you as their client might need. And it's also a way for them to gauge your needs in other areas that community work serves and sort of a pathway into those services that you might need. So that's actual formal training that they're getting. And it does also help the barbers because they can be paid for providing this service as well. Right. So there's a lot of detail in this, but there's a couple of things that are interesting that Anna included in this was there's a Harvard study, Barbers as Mental Health, Suicide Prevention, and Interpersonal Violence Gatekeepers in the Community. So there are a lot of studies and work on how barbers can really serve mental health needs with their clients. And so this is what Community Works is doing, is taking that extra step with their barbers. So as you can see, the story is a lot longer than what I've described. But
plenty left to find out.
Yeah, it's a really good read. And Joaquin and also Charles Smith, who's with Community Works, they talked from a personal point of view, having been justice involved, about how this sort of thing would have helped them and how they see it helping others.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Also in this paper, we have Pam Zubek's story about Old Stage Road and the talks of maybe gating that overnight and some of the feedback from the community. So check that out. That's on newsstands right now. Fall Arts Preview, the story about Community Works, Old Stage Road, and more. I also want to talk just a little bit about next week's paper because it's a doozy. We have Food Editor Matthew Schniper's State of Plate story. That's going to be the cover story next week. And with that will be 5 podcasts about basically a deep dive into the restaurant, food and drink industry here in Colorado Springs with some local big names when it comes to food and drink. And we have their opinions voiced that will both be in print and through our podcast, State of Plate. That comes out September 28th.
Yeah, this is going to be so interesting because so much has changed.
Since yesterday?
Seriously, yeah. I mean, it was already changing, but since the pandemic, there's sort of been this explosion. So I think it's going to be a great read.
What do you think about the food scene here in Colorado Springs? What's your opinion?
Sometimes I look back to when I've been here for 9 years now, and I look back and I can't believe how different it is. And I think there's so much going on. Matt always dives into it. Every week when I edit Matt's work, I kind of make either mental notes or actually write down, okay, these are the places I need to check out.
There,
yeah, because there's so much more going on than we know by just word of mouth or walking down the street or whatever. And so digging into that, I think, is going to show us how far we've come.
Yeah. And Greta, you're pretty new here.
Yeah.
How long have you been here now?
Just over a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you came from the East Coast?
I did.
What do you think of the food scene here?
Yeah, I mean, it seems very up and coming. There's a lot of independent restaurants, which didn't really surprise me. I mean, this is a pretty big metropolitan area, so I knew there was going to be some, locals and especially in the downtown area, some independent restaurants. But I've really enjoyed it so far. I try to not eat. I know we have a lot of chains here too, so I try to avoid those as much as I can. But I think the vibrant independent restaurant community is really strong.
I think we are, because of our geography too, and you talked about the chains, I think we're at this vortex of cultures within the country that sort of meet, and you have, the military, we're sort of transient, so they bring a lot of their food tastes from all over the world, and that gets catered to in the city. And somebody said they think I'm wrong, but when it happened, I said, we've got to be the only state with the only city with a Whataburger and an In-N-Out, because that's like Texas and the West Coast colliding perfectly here. But I think somebody said, no, there's maybe Denver. Well, no, I don't think Denver has a Whataburger yet.
We're getting a second Whataburger.
We're getting a second Whataburger. So more is coming.
There could be 2 long lines.
Yeah.
And I remember I won't go into all the details of this, but when the first Whataburger opened up, I was staying at a hotel near it.
Oh, yeah.
Because of a house issue, and
You had the bird's eye view.
yeah, we could see the line wrap all the way around where we were staying. It was
Yeah.
and 4-hour waits, 5-hour waits.
Still blows my mind.
For a cheeseburger.
I've never
either
been
of
to
you-
Whataburger ever.
Yeah, have you sat in the line?
I've not. And when In-N-Out opened, I know there were like
Yeah.
even 8, 9, 10-hour lines to get it
Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
In-N-Out. So
I remember when we first reported on that In-N-Out was coming here, people got
Lost their
so
mind.
excited on social media and
Yeah.
everything. I couldn't believe
Yeah.
It was the biggest story of the year, I'm pretty
Yes.
sure. So we don't have much time left, but I do
Yeah.
want to touch on another of Greta's stories that's coming out next week. This is the free lunch story. Talk about that just real briefly.
Yeah, so food, but kind of a different angle here.
Different angle on food.
But yeah, so there's a ballot measure coming up this November that Coloradans will be able to vote on about whether the state will provide funding for free school lunch and breakfast for every student in the state. So this would be funded by decreasing the tax deductions for those who make more than $300,000 a year in Colorado. And there's a lot of interest in it. Obviously, the anti-hunger organizations, both here in the Springs and statewide, are very motivated to get this passed. And in some of the school districts around Colorado Springs, it's said to be really needed. District 2 is kind of interesting because they already, and I focus a lot on them in the story, because they already provide...
Dave.
Dave, come on. They already provide free meals through a federal program because of how many students in that district need them. So I talked a little bit with them about what it's like to just have students come into the cafeteria and go straight to the lunch line. I actually visited Centennial Elementary School on Monday. Or was it Tuesday? It might have been Tuesday. And, just kind of seeing definitely a big difference from when I went to school. Everyone pretty much brought their lunch, but there's a very small group of students who brought their lunch, and then the rest just went into line and really enjoyed their school lunch. So one of the main arguments for it is it reduces stigma for kids who get free and reduced lunch. And you can kind of see in that Centennial Elementary School just all the kids getting the same exact thing. So it kind of standardizes it for everyone, and they're all seeming happy with it. So,
Centennial is District 2, right?
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
I thought it was interesting too, real fast, that you talked about how it also reduces the barriers for the families applying,
Right.
because it can be kind of a difficult process for them to apply to get those free lunches.
Yeah.
That requirement went away during the pandemic, and it
Yeah.
worked really well. So they saw this huge spike in people who needed it actually accessing
Right.
it, and that would be something that would really decrease the pressure on the families.
Yeah, and that's one of the big arguments for is the experience during the pandemic when they saw that increase. It's like, okay, well, we know people need it. We know that food insecurity also increased during the pandemic, so maybe there's even more people now who need it. And so the advocates are looking at it like, why don't we just continue this program? It's clearly needed.
And correct me if I'm wrong, that's Prop FF?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I think free food,
Healthy
right?
School Meals for All
Okay.
is what the program would be called. Yeah.
All right.
That's easier.
Yeah.
Proposition
free food. Yeah, okay. All right. Well, I want to thank Greta Anderson and Helen Lewis for being in studio today.
Sure.
Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to pick up this week's Indie on newsstands now. It's the Fall Arts Preview. And let us know what you thought about the show or the paper on social media. We read all your comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Click the bell so that you get notifications of new shows. This show was produced by Dave Gardner and Nick Raven. Videocast was directed by Nick Raven, distributed by our digital team, which is made up of Sean Cassidy and Michaela Jones. Dustin Glatz is our art director. Amy Gillantine's our publisher. I'm Bryan Grossman, editor-in-chief. Be sure to join us next week for another episode of the Indy 15.